All right, so we're going to talk about first how to control space, how to gain space, control space when we're playing in half guard, because that's kind of where this all starts from. Any of the moves that we're going to talk about in this instructional all has to do with first maintaining control and maintaining that space, and if that space is gone, how to create that. So we're going to start in half guard. Now, when we're in half guard on the bottom, for a lot of these different positions, I always want to try and maintain as much space as I can, right? To a certain extent. But I want space. I don't want Dustin to get in here and start being able to crowd me, starting to get under, because at this point, it's going to be a lot harder to do a lot of things because of the space is taken away. So, the first part of space in half guard is the space between our two bodies. The second part of space is who's controlling the inside and the outside space when we're in half guard. If I'm on the inside here, right, and I'm kind of boxing out his arms over there, now I'm going to be in much better control. I always want to control the inside space. If any of you do judo, it's the exact same. Whoever's controlling the inside space is going to be winning the game. Versus Dustin being on the inside, right, whether he's in like this, whether he's got his arm just pinned up here and he's got a collar grip, now he's on the inside and he's going to be in a much better position to control. So the first thing we're going to do is how do we set up this control, let's say off of a bad scenario where he's in here, he's closed this off, and we need to create some space and control it. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to make sure I control his hip on this side. Okay, whether I'm stiff arming it, whether I'm using the blade of my forearm, if he's a little bit closer I could do that. In this case I'd probably just stiff arm a little bit to try and keep that space. Second thing I'm going to do, if possible, I'm going to hip out and get my knee on his hip on this far side. So I'm going to hip out and get my knee inside here if he's giving me that much space. Okay, so if he turns, you can see on this side. Okay, with his hips back like that, it makes it easy for me to hip out and get at least my knee. And I can feel his hip bone on this side, and I'm going to use that to create some space. This is one way we can create space. There's a few other ones we'll show in a second. So I'm going to use the framing hand on his hip on this side, the framing knee on his hip on this side, to push myself away. I'm not trying to push him away, push myself away, enough to get this hand to be able to swim in. Okay, so once I got this hand inside, once I got this hand on the inside, I take my elbow as a frame on his chest to open him up. Okay, so this elbow came on his frame. I got this nice tight frame here. When he pushes down, he's running from my elbow to my shoulder all the way into the mat. Okay, versus just pushing here. Right now you've got all these joints I have to worry about, and it's not really going into the mat. I keep it here. This space now with me framing allows me to slide this knee up. So I slide the knee up to my face and then set it. And it's basically taking the place of where my elbow was. My elbow is here maintaining that space, slide the knee up, and that sets. Now I can posture back. Now when I'm in here, I never want to straighten out, right? I always want to be facing what's going on. So I'm always on my side, I'm always facing into Dustin. That's good for me. My foot here is going to be glued to his hip. I'm kind of wrapping it around, bring it here, kind of wrapping it around his hip here with my knee. Now this is where it takes a little bit of practice. If my knee goes too far down, he's going to push my knee down, he'll be able to collapse it. Right? And if it's too far out, then he's probably going to push it this way and start to swim in. So what I need is I need to find this point right below his collarbone, and it's the tip of my knee. I need to find that good center point right there. Where now when he pushes down, this going through my knee to my hip, from my hip to the ground. And no matter how hard he pushes, no matter how big he is, this frame is what keeps that space and keeps controlling that space. Okay? Another thing is, if you want, you can actually just rest. So if you sit up, you can rest your foot on there too. If you don't like the wrap for some reason, you can rest your foot on this bottom foot. I'll show you why and a reason I don't like to do that. I like to wrap. So this hand, I'm going to come and grab the sleeve grip. I'm going to bite that to my hip. And the reason this is important is, one, it's going to set up some of our sweeps we're going to do later on, but two, it also protects my foot from getting ankle locked. If I let go of this grip, he could reach back, start to mess up my ankle, maybe a toe hold, maybe a straight ankle lock. A couple of different options you might have there, but I can avoid all of that by simply having this control, pin it to my hip, and I have this up here. This hand's going to be free. This is going to be my safety hand. If he manages to push this leg down with this hand, or maybe I lose this grip, this hand is what's going to allow me to keep space. I press on his chest, I can bring my knee back through and replace it. Okay, if he starts to turn in, I can use this to block that side and adjust my frame. So this is my safety hand. If he brings this leg through, right, one of the things that he wants to do on the top is he wants to stiff arm this leg through and slide this up to close that space off. This hand is going to be my safety net to make sure I can push that knee back out and create that space. So this is going to be our basic fundamental position. One last little detail. Like I said, the reason that I don't like to put my foot on top here, if we turn, I can keep pretty good pressure by grapevining this leg around and straightening out my leg. Okay, that puts a lot of pressure on his knee and puts a lot of pressure on his leg. It makes it much harder for him to stand, makes it much harder for him to pass when I'm in this position, versus just having my foot here. Here I'm not putting a lot of pressure on his leg. He can stand, he can move it pretty good. If I grapevine this around and straighten my leg a little bit, kind of curl my toes around, that puts pressure here, pressure there. And that's why I like to bring this leg and just place it right here, kind of behind his hip, wrapping around. You could put it here if you got enough space, you got long enough legs. Okay, so that's the basic position we're going to start from. Now there's a bunch of different things, like I said, that you can do to maintain that space. So one more thing that we're going to do, we'll take a look at. So I have the space I kind of mentioned already, but let's say that I make the mistake and I don't have a sleeve. He manages to wrap my leg down and press it down. Okay, this is not good for me. Now there's some things that we're going to talk about that I can do if he does do this, but I can still frame back up and get the control back. This hand can come here, he can press on the shoulder to create enough space. It's stiff-armed, so now he's framed from my shoulder to the hand, so that I can slide this back up. Again, if he uses this hand to push the leg out that way, I could frame here with this free hand and frame back up. If he pushes the leg completely out of the way, slides it through, and he gets through, then I go back to my elbow like we originally started. He collapses in, I frame with my elbow, push him back up, and slide that back in. Okay, so to review from the beginning, what we started, he was down on here. I'm going to frame the hip, okay? I'm going to hip out and get the knee and the hip right here. I'm using the two frames on the hip to move myself away so that this arm can swim under and frame his upper body. Now from here, make sure I got a nice frame here. I slide, if you sit up, Dustin, it looks like this. It slides to my face and then open. Okay, so it's kind of like your kickboxing warm-ups, for any of you guys that do kickboxing, they'll open like that. Same thing, slide to your face, then open up. And then this knee is going to take place of where my elbow's framing. So he's in here, slide the knee to my face, open up, then I press with my knee to open up here. Get the sleeve grip, bite it to my ankle. I can grapevine with my bottom foot and straighten it out. And I'm using this hand to do any kind of recovery I might want to set up some of my sweeps and things like that. So that's just the very basic position of half guard that we're going to play with. And now we're going to dive into a bunch of the moves that you can do from there.